Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Logical Nonsense Podcast. Today we have Professor Lyrical on to the pod, a rapper as well as a professor, just like the name says. Super excited to have him on, go into his journey in hip hop as well as some modern day rap topics. First off, how we doing today, Professor Lyrical?
I am chilling hard, my man. How you doing? How is it? How is it having logical nonsense coming all together on the podcast, man? How does that work?
How I always explain it, my name is I speak a lot of nonsense. I'll go on rants on this podcast, right? But if you look between the lines, there's a lot of logic in what I'm saying.
I feel
So
that.
I
I
I I
feel
call
that.
it logical nonsense,
Not too
it's a
far
lot
off
of
from my everyday
ranting,
life.
and some bold takes here and there, but, there's some logic and some common sense in what I'm saying, so that's kinda where I got the name, but I'm doing good,
That
man.
sounds pretty
Every
good.
time I love podcasting, I love meeting new people like yourself. I've listened to some of your music in the last couple days, and I'm super excited to dive deep into it. So
I
let's get
appreciate it.
started. I obviously am never going to introduce you the way I should. So how about you introduce yourself, who you are, some of your background, and maybe even like your mission statement.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I go by Pro. That's probably most simple.
Okay.
I'm an MC, as you said, and a professor. Pro is short for professor. I went by Lyrical when I was a kid. My last name is Plord, so I used to go by Lord Plord, and it turned into Lyrical Lord Plord when I was rapping fast. So the lyrical kind of stuck, and once I started getting more into the actual education arena, Pro made, like I said, a lot of good sense. So yeah, and my as far as like statement or mission statement, I try to use mostly the positive aspects of hip hop culture to try to, enact change socioeconomically, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, I'm a lyricist. You know what I mean? So try to use my superpowers for good. Right.
Absolutely. I love that. No, I love that. I feel like you can definitely change some people's perspectives through music and, make people feel a different way when you're telling a story. So
Yeah,
I love the
absolutely.
lyrical aspect of hip hop, something I'm very interested in. So,
Mm.
um let's go into your journey a little bit. You hinted at it a little bit when you were a kid. Let's go into your journey of hip hop.
Yeah, cool. So I'm originally from Lowell, Massachusetts. It's like 20-25 miles north of Boston. After I graduated high school and did the college thing, I went to UMass Lowell, right in Lowell. I ended up moving to Cambridge, started promoting a lot of the scene there. By that time, I'd already been rapping for quite a while. I started
Yeah.
really getting serious in high school, like a lot of people. Put out,
Yeah.
actually had vinyl out with my group X Cal when I was in high school, and then we just started doing more and more work. We did more singles and traveling. Went took a lot of trips to New York City every weekend. Shout out to Ski Beats, mentor of ours and producer of ours. And once I got to Cambridge, there was clearly a need for people to be able to balance kind of the business aspects of hip hop. There weren't a lot of people promoting the scene at the time. I
Yeah.
kind of hit there at a time when it was kind of a lull. Kind of took over a lot of those duties just because I had a little bit of business experience. My first degree was business, then math before my doctorate, graduate stuff, and so I'd always had kind of a business background. And people were like, "What do you do with math?" Well, hey, go do business. You'll like that. It'll help you with your hip hop stuff. And that wasn't a bad idea. And so from there, I just started promoting, got into Cambridge, Massachusetts, Boston area, and really started taking things very seriously. Formed a group called Invasion that was helping me promote and market myself as a solo artist when I moved down there. We actually formed like a triple entendre, if you will.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Presidents, Sick Men, their cousins lived in their family house, and we formed the group Invasion and the promotion company Invasion Entertainment. And that was really the start of my seriousness in terms of in the Boston area. So that was kind of it. That's how I got into it. I'm now in Washington D.C. I'm in the DMV. I teach at UDC, which is the University of District of Columbia. But before I moved out here, I was at Northeastern University in Boston for about 7 years, and that's where I did my doctorate as well. So I taught there as an assistant teaching professor of mathematics. So yeah,
Awesome,
yeah, man.
awesome. Very
It's different.
interesting.
It's different.
Yeah, very interesting, very unique. I mean, you don't hear every day that, your professor is also a rapper.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah, yeah.
very unique, very, kind of one of those headlines, if you will, where you turn your head like, "Is that right? Did I read
Right,
that right?"
right, right,
One of
right,
those
right, right.
things, but definitely a big reason why I wanna have you on to talk about it, and,
Yeah,
yeah, excited. So, first off, let's go down your rap career. What kinda got you into rap? What yeah, well, what got you into
yeah.
rap?
I mean, being in close proximity to New York City, my grandmother took me out to and my grandfather at the time. They took me to see the Yankees and the Red Sox play in New York City, and then we did like the little kind of New York tourist kind of trip thing. And I saw rappers getting money thrown at them on the corner, kind of a thing, which was kind of crazy. I was like, you can get money for this, and that was really kind of for me, anyways. It felt like hip hop's infancy. It was
Yeah,
before I knew much about how it worked, and I just thought that was so cool as a kid. So I came back home and I was like, I might have a little business plan for this, like this little rapping
yeah,
talent. I really wasn't good at that time or anything, and it made me see it in a different, under the big lights kind of deal. And I was always doing the creative stuff as a little kid, and trying to write songs and all that stuff was just kind of a natural thing for me for whatever reason. I mean, at a time where hip hop was already starting to do its thing, and just seeing it in New York and then bringing it back to Boston, and not really ever I never really wanted to leave Boston. I never really wanted to leave Lowell, even for the longest time. Lowell's like a city. I went to Chelmsford High School too, by the way. So Chelmsford High School is like a suburb of Lowell. So I left the city as a kid, did got my degree at Chelmsford High School, went back to Lowell, did the Cambridge thing. And every time I was playing with New York artists or doing bigger shows or touring or whatever, people be like, yo, if you really want to do it big, you need to move. And I was like, man, I'd like to not have to move. I'd like to, kind of
yeah,
establish what we're doing here.
yeah,
And that's a tough choice for everybody. You know what I mean? So a lot of cities have now popped up as places that have movements, but Boston's always been tricky. So Boston, because it's a college town, it's a lot of transient kind of thing. But being a college town, I mean, I kind of was able to do my thing and start teaching at colleges as an adjunct professor, bro. And the professor stuff came way after. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
yeah,
just grew up as a rapper. All I wanted to do was rap and write rhymes, and I've been doing it, for multiple decades. And the professor thing is relatively recent. My first college course I ever taught was like 2007, 2000, the 2006, 2007 year. I got my I know, kind of drifted out of that question there, but I started just to clarify the pathway, I started teaching as an adjunct while going for my master's.
yeah.
So that's not normal either. Like,
No.
teaching math, right? There's such a need that I ended up getting a high school teaching job at Lowell High School in where I'm from. So they took the chance on me, and they're like, he can probably reach the kids. You know what I'm saying? And like,
Yeah, yeah,
and they were forming an alternative program. I wanted to do that. It was for kids that weren't really doing particularly well. I
yeah,
figured I could make an impact. I was speaking at schools when I was performing, little middle schools and stuff, later high schools and colleges. And I was always like, the influence that you have is crazy. Like, kids coming up to get autographs from the time you're a kid, people coming
yeah,
up to get your autograph, and you see how they listen to you, and they're dying to get an album or whatever. And that always registered with me. And I was like, I don't get why educators don't necessarily have the same platform as rappers. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
I wish I had the credentials as an academic to really be
Definitely,
doing that, and then
definitely.
slowly but surely just kind of did that, but always doing rap, always the lyrical thing and the professor thing. So it was like the lyrical thing was up here, and the professor thing's always been trying to catch up. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's kind of the narration of it in short form.
Definitely. I mean, teaching is one of those things that I think is more of it's kind of got like a local influence, if you will. You don't
Mm,
necessarily always hear about it. You don't necessarily always see it.
right.
But as a teacher, you would be able to see it. My mom and my dad were both educators. So
Wow.
definitely
Okay.
understand that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that whole teaching aspect of it,
Right. Right.
and definitely have seen kids' lives change. Like, literally,
Yeah.
just from one good teacher or one, maybe it's even
Right.
just one little, influence that they give them, whatever. So definitely think the influence isn't talked about enough. It's there, but it's not talked about enough. Whereas, hip hop, it's talked about a little bit more because it's more public
Yeah.
platform that's
For
out
real.
there in the news and, creates a little bit more drama, if you will.
Sure does.
So
Understatement. Yeah.
yeah, definitely, definitely, especially, even lately, which we'll
Very
get
nice.
to. We'll get to. So
Yeah, bro.
let's hop into some of the more. nitty-gritty of your style of rap, how would you describe your rap? I know in reading a little bit about you and even listening to a little bit about you, you call yourself or refer to yourself a little bit as like a spoken word artist. I know you do some poetry as well. Yeah, describe your style of rap.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, man. Great question. Like, I think if you're a lyricist, right, you want to be heard
Yeah,
lyrically, right? And when you're doing spoken word with no beat,
yeah,
it's really easy to make sure that you're heard. So I just started going to spoken word, and shout out to the Lizard Lounge in Cambridge. It was one of the first places I could get into when I was underage. Not that I was supposed to be able to get in when I was underage, but they did Sunday
yeah,
nights. Shout out to the Jeff Robinson Trio. Just upright bass, live drums, you know what I'm saying, and sax.
yep,
And MCs would just get up, spoken word poets would get up, just reading poetry, right? And I've
yeah,
never got up and read poetry. It's always been the stuff that's in here that I've either written or freestyled or whatever. And so you would do that, and for me, that was my upbringing and my roots, getting in early shows. And
yeah,
so I've always been very comfortable and spoken word friendly. So as I've matured with it a little bit, I've taken the opportunity to write more spoken word pieces specifically for spoken word, but with a hip hop flavor. So it's really no different. It's just rapping without a beat. But you try to be more conversational with it so that you're not screaming at people.
yeah,
A lot of times spoken word is in some intimate settings, or it can be, and you
yeah,
don't want to come in like too hardcore or whatever. It's really, you know what, like lo-fi is really kind of a big thing right now. In fact, I'm working
yeah,
on a lo-fi album with my man Jay Johnson, and we got 12 tracks done for that. And they're all the kind of tracks that, as dope as the tracks are, we could do the same album with no tracks and it would be the spoken word version because it's very conversational, and it's I like to call it grown, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
It's not screaming on people, but I
yeah,
still want to scream on people like we all do,
yeah, yeah,
we have to have our moments, our ups and downs, our yin and our yang, you know what I'm saying? Kind of like
definitely.
the name of the show, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, definitely.
absolutely.
Have to have that balance for sure. I think
Yeah, man.
something about spoken word too, you talk about, lyricists and, getting that message across, maybe more storytelling, hip hop. I
Yeah.
think it is important that you're
It's
not
it,
going
well,
after more of a maybe a little baby style where you hear that, more
right.
mumble rap that we've
I,
seen
I think
enter
I
the
think
game now. I think, you know, it's important for your style,
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
make sure they actually hear what you're saying,
Especially when
clearly.
people aren't like a lot of the shows that I do a lot of college shows or a lot of
Yeah,
shows that are based on festivals or people bringing me in because of the uniqueness of what I do. And by definition, a lot of times there's not hardcore hip hop fans in that
yeah,
crowd who've never heard it before. So
yeah,
if you're giving them spoken
good
word
point.
and it kind of creeps up on them
Yeah,
before you know it, it's an art to that of creeping in with it and
yeah.
being able to say things that are going to register even in sentence form, but then you can convert it into more of the traditional hip hop. So
Yeah, you're kind of blending. I don't know if you wanna say different genres or you're blending 2 different things. You're
yeah,
kind of almost like a transition person for, an ordinary listener, who maybe not be into hip hop like you said, because,
absolutely.
they're listening to the story and then they're like, "Oh, wow, that beat's pretty nice behind it,"
Yeah, right, right, right.
that kinda thing, and then, "Oh, I kinda like this too." Definitely, I
And,
totally see what you're saying there for
and
sure.
you can write your stuff to be stuff that would land on beats if you want to. Like I
Definitely.
mean, I do spoken word where I'm writing it with a beat in mind. And then
Yeah.
I'm doing ones that I'm making sure there's no beat in mind. Like it has
Yeah.
no regard for like any set
Yeah, yeah,
tempo.
yeah.
So it just
Definitely.
depends.
Do you find yourself experimenting with different flows?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like I came up like doing super fast rap. Like I was
Yeah.
trying to be the fastest rapper in the world, right?
Busta
And
Rhymes style, yeah.
yeah, exact. Buster was a huge influence, as
Yeah.
was even older Chip Fu, right? Like
Yeah,
Fushnik,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I'm working with some stuff with Chip Fu right now. To me, he's unbelievable at this stage. He's
yeah,
still one of the nicest in the world, right?
yeah,
Because of the dexterity and the way when you train yourself to be able to say things at that pace, slowing down is like taking off the
yeah.
training wheels. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's like it's really like putting them back on, I should say, because it's
Yeah,
so basic,
so different.
and so it's only natural you're going to swim in the beats more when you've sort of felt like you've mastered the regular 4/4 time kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
I like the experimental stuff that a lot of people are doing. People complain a lot about a lot of newer rap, and I get it. There's definitely
It's
a lane
changed. Yeah.
of where it makes sense, but
Yeah.
and then there's a lane of where it's like, eh. But experimentally, like trying to push the envelope, I always think is cool. And there'll be people that come out today that'll inspire what you'll do tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
I'm cool with it like that. You know?
Definitely. I mean, you hear flows on almost any new hip hop, not almost every. There are some artists that you hear flows that you're like, "Wow, I thought I've heard it all, but I haven't."
Right, 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 right.
So, I mean, there's always opportunity to go and experiment like I talked about, and I think what's cool about music is we continue to see people experiment with that. So it's awesome that you continue to try to better yourself and
Mm,
expand your sound because that's huge in music, right? Wow, I've never heard him try to go and challenge himself on that type of
yes,
flow for sure. So,
yes, absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well, going kind of into style of rap, very similar note. What does your process of making music look like? I know some artists are, I'm gonna write a song and then I'll find the beat. Some are, let me feel this beat. I'm gonna wrap myself into this process. Yeah,
Right.
just take me through it all. How does your process work, or is it different every time?
Sometimes. So I do a duo project too. It's called Pro Quo, and
Okay.
my man Quo is from Massachusetts. And over COVID-19, we made this album called Instant Brotherhood.
Yeah.
If you're searching for it, it's Pro Quo as one word, right? And we made the album through his stable and collection of beats and producers from around the world. So there's a
Definitely.
lot of international producers on the project. It's kind of like an all-star team of producers, really. We call it IB Hood, right? Instant Brotherhood. And that Instant Brotherhood family got me listening to scores of beats from around the world. So over COVID-19, I was exclusively writing to beats because we had so many that
Yeah.
it was just a plethora, and I just had to narrow it down. I said, I got to make these fit or whatever. So, like a lot of people, you're just going through beats, the ones that feel and speak to you the most. But when you're using different producers, you're going to have different kinds of vibes, no doubt, right?
Yeah.
Right now, interestingly, one of those guys is Jay Johnson. He's here from the U.S. and I did a song called "Yo, That's Pro" with him, and another song I have called "No," which is out in the video and so forth. And you'll hear kind of some of the lo-fi kind of stuff, and that's not all he does, but we channel all his lo-fi beats. So right now, I go through his lo-fi beats that I'm really feeling, and just like when I'm walking, I'm thinking, I'm driving. For me,
Yep.
like I don't have a lot of time to listen to the latest and greatest thing on
Yeah.
repeat. I might listen to the latest and greatest thing once if I really like it, twice or three times, but I'm not listening to something 40 times because I got to
Yeah.
get back to the beats.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my downtime. And then you're thinking about it when you're in the shower, you're thinking about it, whatever you're doing, once there's one that you feel, and then it's just on repeat, whether it's through, we do a lot of stuff through SoundCloud. He posts his beats there. Sometimes
Yep.
we'll post them as hidden tracks on BandLab, right? And we just send them back and forth. And you're walking around all day with it, right? So these days, to save time, I'm definitely usually writing to beats.
Yeah.
Not so much just, hey, I got a rhyme or whatever. And like this sound, I don't mean it to sound like, hey, look at me, but it's like at this stage of my life, if you give me a beat, I can write to it very quickly, and it's going to sound. I hope it's going to sound well crafted enough that you're not
Yeah.
going to be like, man, I wish he did X, Y, and Z on it. If I hear the beat, I just focus in on that and I make that my mission, and I write to that. Like it's like decorating a house, bro. It's like you
Yeah.
got one piece of furniture that you got to build around. All right, I'm working with this piece of furniture because I like that piece,
Yeah.
not just because it's some random beat. Like I gotta like the beat, and when I do, I want to design around it. You know what I mean? That's maybe the
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
way to say it. Yeah,
And you gotta have that chemistry between the lyrics and the beat.
yeah,
Certain certain
but
certain
rhymes.
songs are gonna yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
like
sorry.
like he might hit me and say like, "Hey, that one rhyme you said over here made me think of this beat," and and then we might
Yeah,
work together a little bit on something like that too. So that happens as well.
definitely. Just kind of a creative process that, takes you where it will, but for the most part,
Yeah,
it's pretty structured and, "Okay, I like this
absolutely.
beat. I'm gonna, you know, try to make it sound
Go
good."
to town. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go to town. And
Really kind of
most of it is walking around and with the phone recording or whatever, or
yeah,
just if you if sometimes I have something on my phone that I'm listening to, right? And
yeah.
you don't have anything to record to, you're just doing the bars over until you got. I might do 4 or 8 before I feel like I'm gonna forget about them, and then I'll go
Yeah,
home
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'll be like, let me practice those, and let me say them, or let me write them down, and then go back to it later. So that's a lot of that stuff.
Definitely. You
Yeah.
mentioned earlier you're making a lo-fi kinda sounding album. Is there a type of production that you tend to lean towards when you select it, or that you've noticed yourself gravitate towards a sound?
For the lo-fi, the best way to explain it for me is, and I'd say this, Jay is he makes new school beats as well as he makes old school beats. I
Yeah.
think his pocket, he's like a early 2000s kind of like
Yeah,
that might
okay.
be his main thing, maybe late
Yeah,
90s, right? That might be his foundation. And then what he does that's sounds like, everything in the last like 5 years, the blend of those things together on lo-fi medium tempo beats. I
got
think
it.
he's brilliant. He's a brilliant pocket for that. And just has a great ear. And so I love that sound. I've always
Yeah.
said, why don't people take the best of new school and the
Yeah.
stuff in the middle and mesh them together more sonically in a way that you're going to grab new and old heads and
Yeah.
have them say, "Yo, that's dope."
Definitely. Are you big into, like, sampling on production? I know that's a huge obviously, I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean,
it's been like
mm,
that for a while now, but it
right.
just feels like we continue to get deeper and deeper into
Yeah.
samples,
I mean,
you know?
yes and no. So most of his stuff is it's sample free kind of stuff if he's using a sample or
Yeah,
he's
which
playing
I
it out on.
totally respect.
Right,
Totally
right, right,
respect in
right.
nowadays age.
Right. It's either sample free or playing it out. And then, shout out to my man Jay Brown, who's in so I'm on a label called Freedom Corner Brand, and we're distributed via Sony Orchard, right? And so if you're doing something like in-house, Jay is a genius musician, right? He doesn't really sample as much. He's live instrumentation on everything, right?
Yep.
Um, so he will make a beat that he might have used the sample. And he's like, you know what, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna
yeah,
do this over and I'm gonna do it all live. Or we might hear something and say, "Hey, want to make something that's close to this and just do it out live," right? Because if you're doing stuff for synchronization or you're doing stuff, I've done a lot of commercials in my life. I've done a lot of projects for companies. I've had movie placement,
yep,
songs and movies, that kind of stuff. That
yeah,
can't have a sample in it. So normally, can't have a sample, can't have curses, and it has to be kind of a lively. It's a different kind of production. Like it's a kind of
yeah,
production where there's a lot of change ups and switch ups, not like the
yeah,
same
beat
recipe
switches,
you'd
yeah,
use to make a traditional song.
yeah,
And you just can't have samples in those. So for me, it's easier if producers are hitting me with beats that don't have samples, or at least they're sample
yeah,
free. You know what I'm
definitely.
saying? But I love samples. You know what I'm saying? I came up with
Oh,
the
absolutely, yeah.
tables in my house, doing that stuff, and I still, do the same thing. So
Yeah. No, totally, totally respectable too, I think, honestly, from a listening standpoint, because I do a lot of album reviews. So,
right,
samples, when they're executed correctly, they're great. I do think
absolutely,
it's a little oversaturated sometimes, because, like,
it's a little
there's certain artists and, I would say 70% of the albums sampled, sometimes, like, I'm just giving a hypothetical
right.
example, and it's like, "Okay, can we see something different on this album?" Like, I know
Yeah,
you
right,
want it cohesive, but at the same time, like, we need something different from the
right,
production because right now
right.
you are really sticking to one lane, and we're not seeing the breadth of you as a production choice and as an artist. Like,
Yeah,
we're seeing that you can really rap well on this sampled beat, but can
yeah. Well said.
um
Right.
yeah, can you have some
Yeah.
versatility within your game? So,
Right.
yeah, no, that's very, very interesting. I think it's all and like I said, it's also respectable because most people aren't doing that right
Yeah.
now.
Right. Right.
So, awesome. Yeah, no, super cool. All right, let's go into your favorite rappers growing up and then your favorite rappers now.
It's funny. I mean, I went real old school with Chip Fu. I mean, like Chip from the Fushnikins, man. I just in terms of fast rappers, I was like, oh my gosh, like that dude is so
Yeah,
clear. The
yeah,
Jay Z's of the world, those kind of, like people that are clear and fast. Uh,
yeah,
I always appreciate the nimbleness of people that are able, Busta Rhymes
definitely.
and those kind of folks. Uh, the old school cats, pen games. I mean, who I think the first old school cat who really, really was like bam was like the classics like Kane and Rakim, right? Like you hear those
Yeah,
kind of people and you're like, okay, they have, even though they're old school, they're at a point in the old school when old school came new school, right? It was like before that, to me, it was
yep.
almost unlistenable,
It's
right?
always an old school and a new school. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was like almost unlistenable before that, right? It was like you were
Yeah,
just excited that it was like this hip hop stuff, but it was like it wasn't lyricism, right? And so as a lyricist, you kind of go back to BC, pick a BC date because your history. Kane says that, right? Like, so
Yeah.
that's a great, in my head, I'm like, Kane is the beginning of when lyricism kind of really, there's people out there before that,
Yeah.
obviously, Cool Mo D's or
Maybe
whatever,
not as
but
mainstream,
yeah,
but yeah.
right, 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 right. The LL Cool J's and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
it's like that era kind of ushered in. It became cool to write. It became like you didn't. It wasn't too tough guy now to write cool rhymes,
Yeah.
right? It was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
and I needed that door open, and the little kid me, anyways, needed that door open, right, to get to where I am now.
Definitely.
So of course, the people who are similar to that in today's day and age, obviously in the battle realm right now, we're seeing some of that, the J. Cole's and so forth. So people with that kind of pen game, and even the Drakes and the Kendrick, right? I mean, I know we're gonna talk about them,
Yeah,
obviously, but
yeah, yeah.
it's like they are the carriers of that torch, right, or that baton from way back then to there. And in between, there's a lot of cool styles that come and go, whatever. But when you're trying to say lyricism, it's unless you really want to get niche with it, those are the ones that people can identify easily, right? Like Black Thought and stuff like that, the Nas and everything. And like, of course, you're going to listen to those as a lyricist, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people in between. It just depends how niche and avant-garde you want to get. To me, somebody who does a lot of college shows and talks about socially conscious stuff, the Immortal Techniques of the world
Mm.
are important. That's the homie too, by the way. So I mean, someone
Yeah.
like that is like a mentor to me, and I haven't talked to him in a while, but like that dude made a huge influence on me. The people with substance, the Talib Kweli's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those are important. Pharaoh Monch. I mean, just you know, um, you think of all the people out there whose pen are lethal. I
Yeah.
mean, I wasn't a huge. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say who I wasn't huge on, but I mean, like Master Ace was kind of from the old school, who's still doing it now, right? Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Uh, Eminem's of the world. I mean, it's like I'm not hopping in like Eminem in the deck kind of
Yeah.
thing like that,
Definitely.
but I acknowledge he's ridiculously skilled.
Yeah.
I, I
Yeah.
I love AZ. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like
Yeah.
I'm trying to name the middle ground, and then but there's people today who are like more new than the Kendricks and the J. Cole's and whatever,
Yep.
who are also doing things that are different, right? My man Norman, he's doing crazy stuff. Like people out there that are pushing the
Yeah.
envelope that
Definitely.
you might not necessarily have heard of yet, right? Depending on who
Yeah.
you are, who you're listening to, uh, or people that you go back a decade who get lost in the shuffle. People like Sci-Hi the Prince. I mean, like those people could be household
Yeah.
names, but they're just kind of maybe a little bit more niche, and I got nothing against niche too because I'm pretty niche myself. I think so.
Definitely. No, I like that you acknowledged so many different artists and so many different people who influenced you. Going back to the Immortal Technique, because sounds like you know the guy, which is crazy because he has one of the most iconic songs in hip hop history. Dance with the Devil. I
The
mean,
devil,
that
man.
is
Yeah.
I think that's a moment in time. I mean, people continue to talk about that song and just
Right.
I think it changed perspective. I mean, it's a very shocking song when you
Uh,
listen to it for the first time. I remember
yeah.
when I listened to it for the first time, I was like, "Holy shit!" Like it's one of
Right.
those moments, where you're like, "Wow,
Yeah.
okay."
Right. It is. It is.
But it's mind blowing. It's eye opening. And I think that's what lyricism can do. If it,
Right. Right. Right.
and
Right. Right.
I mean, I'm not saying every song needs to go
Yeah.
that deep, but it has
Yeah.
that potential. But talk about Immortal Technique and what he's like.
Yeah, man. First of all, someone like him, is just a super respectful dude. We all have our personas, right? When we're on
Yeah,
camera, that
yeah,
dude, if I see him tomorrow, he'll be like, "Yo, how's the fam?" I mean, first that's first out his mouth. You know what I'm saying? And you
yeah,
always appreciate that as an artist. I
definitely.
first saw him we have these things in Boston called critical breakdown events. They were at the Villa Victoria in the Latino section of Boston, right? The Villa Victoria would host all these like jams and hip hop shows, real organic things, right? In this cool kind of renaissance-y kind of place, right? And get a few hundred people in there, Immortal Technique there. And I want to say this was probably like 2002, right?
Okay.
Like, and I'm doing a lot in Boston at that time, right? I got like my crew invasion, I'm promoting shows, I'm everywhere, right? I'm
Yep.
literally everywhere. So you don't come into one of those shows and you're gonna meet me and I'm gonna meet you, right? And I
Yeah.
heard him get on the mic And people were already telling me like, "Yo, Lyrical, you wait till you hear this dude. He's right up in you're gonna love this guy, right?" So he gets up on the mic and he goes, I can't remember what the opening bar was. He's something like, "And I'm getting it done, and I'll leave you full of clips like the moon to the sun." Right. And I was like, did he just say I'll leave you full of clips like the moon to the sun? Right. Now here's a dude who's a revolutionary who's not
Yeah.
talking about, I'm gonna
Yeah.
pop two in you, but he's talking about as a revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
He's out there doing this work. Like he'll snipe you as a revolutionary. So here's a dude reading books on the train.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
later on, fast forward, I bring him to
Intelligent. Yeah.
multiple events to come from New York to Boston. I did my birthday party, hosted a battle show for me. I did a couple shows with him in New York City. He stayed at my crib when he came out to do shows
Yeah.
in Cambridge, right? Then again, and it's like, hey, how's the fam? And shout out to Poison Pen as well. So them cats, they come out, we do shows together, whatever. You see how they're living, you see that it was doable, meaning that instead of me just doing my thing in Cambridge, here this dude is at that time taking the bus,
Yeah.
taking the train, whatever he needed to
Yep.
do to go extend the reach, right?
That's
And I'm
awesome.
thinking, man, I really want to start kind of doing that. Like you could be the biggest thing in a couple blocks in Boston, all right? Or you can maybe take the show on the road just a little bit. And this dude's going to go do a college show. And I'm like, you doing a college show, bro? And at the time, where I'm trying to do more school shows, and so he was like a blueprint for me of like how to keep it intellectual, how to keep it lyrical, and
Yeah.
how to make an impact in different arenas than just your local block. And be willing to take that train
Yeah.
and be willing to take,
Definitely.
for at first, which is small coin, to now when he does something, I mean, you're gonna pay him. You know what I'm saying? Like he's
Yeah.
not he's not coming for a few $100 to your show, to your school. You know what I'm saying? So
Definitely.
yeah,
I think it's cool when you see humility in hip hop because it's,
right.
so much. I think a lot of people, they think of hip hop, they think of the money and the guns and the drugs and the gangs. And I think when you see that humility and like, I'm grateful to be here, kind of what you were talking about. Like I'm taking the train, I'm trying to just get noticed. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
I've had a few other artists on this podcast, and they've talked about some people very similar, and those are their favorite people, the down to earth people, the people who are trying to help other artists, that kind of thing.
right.
I know one of them. He used to be a music journalist in Australia. Met
Mm.
Tech Nine.
All right.
Very loyal for all thing following. Says super super humble guy. Super grateful to be on Australia. Kelda Music. She came on, talks about Yuck Mouth with the Loonies. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there's artists that when they're
Yeah,
they're humble, they're noticed by other artists, which is cool.
sure, absolutely. Yeah,
I mean, and you can be confident. I'm not saying like,
right,
be
right.
confident in your stuff, but also, have that humility. Like you said, like,
Right.
how's your fam doing? You know?
Exactly. If you're skilled and you're a decent human, that's a good formula. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like
definitely.
if even one of those is a little south of the border, it's
Yeah,
passable, right? But if
yeah,
both of those are there, it's like why would you not want to work with people like that, right? What
definitely,
it's like
definitely.
cardinal sin, like don't be a jerky boy.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like yeah,
definitely. Definitely. Is there a who's your most memorable, artist that you have worked with?
probably Jay-Z.
Oh,
The
wow.
and when we say worked with, I mean it was like I don't want to overstate that. So Ski, like my mentor, was producing Jay-Z at the same time as producing us and Camp Low and everything. And I would just go and watch in a one bedroom studio, right? Just go and
Wow.
watch Jay-Z do his thing and watch Camp Low do their thing. And then it's our turn to get on the mic kind of stuff. And realizing there's levels to this. You know what I'm saying? Realizing
Yep.
the dedication, the what it
The
takes to be
grind.
dope, right? The method is the I don't want to say methodism. I'm making up words, but the methodical nature to when you want to do something and make an impact about how to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah.
And
The way you go about your
manifesting
business.
yeah, manifesting whatever it is you have up here. You got to
Mhm.
have a plan for it. I don't mean it in the hokey way. I mean like, can you see it? Do you have a pathway that makes sense? Is there some logic to the craziness, right? And
Yeah.
as opposed to, I don't want to steal the whole phrase, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I was like, "Dang,
Right,
he's really
right,
promoting this podcast
right,
right here. I
right, right, right,
appreciate
right.
it."
Right. I don't want the lawsuits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want. But
You'll not get a lawsuit from me.
I,
You have
I was
nothing to
hoping not.
worry
I was
about.
hoping not. I thought it might have been safe.
No,
But yeah, man.
you are totally fine.
But yeah, it's like obviously like people. Here's why too. It isn't just because of the big name, right? It's
Mhm.
because the dude was a regular human being just like me when
Yeah.
I met him. It would be like your neighbor meeting me today, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, there's a dude who raps who's pretty nice, who I might have heard about, but I might not have, right? And
Yeah.
then 5 years later, you become monstrously huge. And then you
Yeah.
see what the fruits of the labor are that actually got the person to that level. And
Mhm.
you feel
Yeah.
like you want to support that person. You want to be a champion for that because that method works. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
it's super dope that you got to see Jay-Z. Is there any other rappers that you have maybe met, maybe have seen, that had a big influence on you?
I was in the battle for world supremacy with Supernatural.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he won that battle.
Yeah.
Mad Skills was in that battle, which is funny because I'm in Alex where I live. I'm in Alexandria, Virginia, which is a few miles from DC, which is where I teach. Right, so I'm in
Yeah.
the DMV. Skills at that time was from Virginia, and people like Virginia. You know what I'm saying? In fact, the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
name of his first album
Yeah.
was from where? Um, but anyways, watching those two battle, thinking I was going to win that battle, right?
Yeah. You
Skills
got
and I
to. You gotta have that
Skills and I
confidence.
were
Yeah.
thinking, yo, we have this battle locked. We're the punchline rappers, right? And then out of nowhere comes Supernatural freestyling in a battle before it was cool to freestyle in battles, right? Watching what Nat has done, somebody else recommended people check out. I mean, if you just want to see a genius freestyler who has made that into a career,
Yeah.
and it's made that a blueprint. I freestyle. I try to have my own little claim to fame, at least in my head, is that I freestyle as well as I write rhymes. And
It's
and
it's a good
I don't
good
you don't
balance.
always see that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You don't usually see one or the other. And it's like I refuse to be any better with the pen than I am off the head, right?
True.
And so you put in
Yeah.
the gymnastics and the calisthenics to do that.
Yeah.
I look to him as the blueprint of what you should be in terms of like what you're doing as a freestyler and to make a career out of it. Obviously, the Harry Macks of the world have done that too. And it shows that there's a viable art form for freestyle. So I want to give respect as an artist to freestyle
Yeah.
as an art form that a lot of times gets swept under the rug. So definitely, I would definitely throw him up in that category too. And again, watching him win a battle that turned into one of the most epic battles of all time, obviously instrumental for me, and seeing where you can take that. I think what's always inspiring to me, doesn't matter what field it is, what it is, how somebody flips something and makes it advantageous to them and doesn't let it just go under the rug. Whether you
Mhm.
win, whether you lose, whether you come in the middle, just being at that table and how you use that to
Yeah.
do sort of the next thing has always been inspirational to me. I love watching people's story and be like, that's the dude from this movie over here. It's like
Yeah,
LL
yeah, yeah,
Cool
yeah.
J, being an extra, and then it's like before you know it, he has a record contract and he's like moving boxes,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, now he's a big star and now he's still on TV. You know what I'm saying? He's hosting the
Yeah.
Grammys like every other year. You know what I mean? It's like, how does
Man's got a lot of cameos, yeah.
yeah, bro. It's like, you know what I mean? You're watching
Yeah.
like I don't know. It's just and similarly, you take a movie like Wild Style, and you're like, what has that launched for people, and how do they
Yeah.
do their thing? Or
Yeah.
or today with more modern movies, how does this launch somebody's career, and how do they keep going? Because you look at the people who had incredible longevity in hip hop, they're
Yeah.
almost always not just doing rap.
Hip hop,
You
yeah.
know what I'm saying?
They're
Yeah.
involved in other industries as well, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So, I would
Definitely.
not have got into teaching if I didn't have rap as the thing that made them take a chance on. They wouldn't have even known me. I didn't have the credentials at the time. I had records in the newspaper or the record store in the ear of the people in the
Yeah.
community and a little something else, and how do you make that work for you, if I'm writing a pitch letter to a college that's trying to bring me and I'm trying to get the price that I want to get, uh, you know, I'm not going to not use what I have to have that be worth my time, or else I'm not going to even be able to go.
Yeah.
So I need to be able to say, hey, remember, you found me because I do X, Y, and Z over here.
Yeah.
And now I need to be able to craft that story of why it's of value of you. You know what I'm saying? And so those things are just, I think, important as an entrepreneur and on that side and making things work for you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, you mentioned teaching, so I think this is a perfect segue and transition into some of your more teaching. As a professor, obviously I mentioned it earlier, this is an interesting combo. You don't hear about this every day. Do you feel like you have to filter or maybe change some of your subject of what you rap about because you're a professor, or have you always been like, has your stuff always been clean from the jump?
So, stupid good question. I regret having albums that weren't always clean.
Yeah,
So to answer the question, and I had one of my best friends in my life, my man Fee, who was in my group X Cal with me. He said it to me. He said, "I made an album called Infinity, which the picture you can see over there was one of the singles from the
yeah,
album." And that album, it was it was always on the radio in Boston, right? All the singles of it. Shout out to WERS, WILD, 94.5, Hot 97, all the stations that were playing the
yeah,
record, the WNBR, my family, right? People that I grew up with supporting the record. Gotta say that, right? I would have had more support, I think, if I didn't have the inferiority complex that I needed to curse to be cool. Right?
yeah,
Like I had the I won't have the ear of the street if I do this
mm,
other thing,
mm,
which is try to make it cool so the kiddies can listen to it too, right? But
yeah,
instead, I was like, and Fee was like, "Yo, you got some songs in there. They don't even need the curses, bro. The stuff is dope." So
yeah,
that now is kind of my business plan. I write rhymes that sound dope and you don't miss the cursing and it still sounds legitimate, right? And I wish more people did that because I got a son, right? I
yeah,
don't need him listening, and he's now in 5th grade and it's still the same thing.
yeah,
He doesn't need to be hearing F bombs just to make my stuff
yeah,
sound tougher and cool. It's not
yeah,
tough. It's not cool. You sound like an idiot if the only thing you can do is
yeah,
say the same 5 curse words all the time, and
true.
you can't come up with something more clever when you wrote with a
Yeah,
premeditated flow. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
every now and then it's gonna be appropriate, right? And
yeah,
I'm not trying to be like holier than thou and that I don't
yeah, yeah,
I've cursed in real life and probably will again, right? It's not like
yeah,
I'm, it could be tomorrow. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah,
But I try not to because of that, and knowing that I could have made more impact in different communities with that. I could have been doing probably more influential things as opposed to just relatively street level stuff with that
yeah,
album, right? It can open other doorways for you, and I think the mindset is that it will close doorways for me if I don't have the parental, guidance logo on there, right? Parental advisory, sorry. And I think that's a mistake on our part. And I think as we get older, we probably it's not a function of age, it's a function of the wisdom that comes with getting to a certain age, right? I think like you
yeah,
go through situations and you say, man, what I was thinking here was faulty, right? Like,
yeah,
let me not use that same faulty thinking in my next experience. Now, it's not to say I won't be in a rap battle tomorrow and, everything's on the table. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's sometimes the nuclear arsenal, let's just say that, right, might be in the playbook when you're in a rap battle, right? But it's
yeah,
not like my business plan. I'm not going out there and say, tomorrow I'm going to get this guy with the haymaker when I
yeah,
drop all these curses, whatever. But you don't want to limit yourself in those situations. But in general, you don't want to limit yourself by using it, right?
yeah,
So that's that. Your song's never going to get in a movie or a TV show if it has curses in there, unless you're already gigantic, right? If you're trying to get accepted into have a song for sync, which could pay you 100K, if you
mhm,
want to make 100K,
yeah,
don't put the curse, don't put the sample. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah,
You know, and so it's
no,
not just because that's my mentality because I'm teaching. And it's not just my mentality because I have a son who doesn't need to be listening to that stuff.
it's
It's my
community.
mentality because it also makes smart business sense as well, right? So
Yeah,
there's a lot of motivation for it. So I don't want it to be just like, oh, I'm just such a wonderful, humanitarian. It's I try to be a good person. I try to do the right thing. I also needed to make some dollars and cents too. And it just so happens that with the career that I have, it makes more sense
yeah,
not to do that negative thing in the first place, right? So it
definitely.
works out.
Well, I really respect it. I think you have a very clear brand and a very clear image that you want to give out to people. You
Hmm.
know, you're here to give perspective on, like you said, economic issues through your
Hmm.
storytelling and your lyrics. And you don't need to do that through, you know, what a lot of people think is a norm in hip hop,
Right,
and
right,
that's cursing, which is
right,
super cool, and that's your brand,
right.
and I think any artist, any consumer of hip hop can appreciate that's what you stand for, and that's what you've stuck by, obviously, like you said in your past music, have you cussed in the past? Yes, but, you've learned from that experience, and something that I always talk about in music and reviewing other people is the evolution of
Correct.
how you first came on as a rapper to now. I mean, look at example I almost always bring up, look at Tyler, the Creator. When he
Mm.
first started,
To the Grinch.
making music,
Right.
it was almost shock rap, right? Like,
Right.
"What the hell did that guy just say?" Like, "Oh my god."
Right.
A lot of people don't like him. Now he's one of the most highly regarded rappers in the game because of what he's able to produce, and he's
When I had to
extremely
explain to my
talented.
son who he was when he did the Grinch rap, "You're a mean one,
Yeah,
Mr. Grinch," right? I was
yeah,
like, You're not gonna believe what this guy sounded like." You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
But
No,
it's the
I mean, the
evolution.
things that were coming out of his mouth too, like, it was just,
Yes.
"What the hell? That is just
Yes. That's
wow."
how he
Like,
got on. I mean, he got on with the shock
yeah,
factor, you know what I'm saying? And, his skills as well, but it's like that ridiculous, over the top, bombastic,
yeah.
kind of thing brought him to
Kinda
where he
what
was.
got
And
him
he's
in the
like
door.
90-degree flip up. You know what I'm saying? Let's
Yeah, now he's
another
winning
90 degrees
Grammys.
over here. Yep.
Now he's winning Grammys and making music that I think is some of the best in the hip hop game right now. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that goes for every hip hop. You're going to see an evolution, whether it's good or bad. A
Yep.
lot of people think talked about Eminem earlier. A lot of people think his evolution turned bad. I
Mm.
think it's debatable.
Right.
What you believe in, what you enjoy, it's obviously your musical preference, but
Yep.
there's always an evolution with an artist.
To
So,
your earlier thing too, I mean, Joyner Lucas is another person to mention, right?
yeah,
Like,
sure.
thought of that when you said Eminem. If I think of a song like "Lucky You," right? It's
Yeah,
hard to criticize that video or that lyricism or that flow for either of them, and I'm still not popping in Eminem on the regular. My thing,
sure.
the voice stuff can get it, but I have to listen to that objectively and go, "That's ridiculous talent," right? Like, that's ridiculous.
Absolutely,
Joyner
yeah.
Lucas is a ridiculously talented MC
Yes,
who still
very.
catches a lot of flack for
He
being
does.
ridiculous,
He
you know?
does.
And it's hard to understand, So
Yeah,
when I know I'm in a room of people that want to bash a Joyner Lucas, I
yeah,
know I'm in the wrong room. And I'm not just saying that because it's a Massachusetts thing.
definitely,
It's
yeah,
it's it's the dude is ridiculously talented. You know what I'm saying? It's
mhm,
like, come on, you got to give it up. Whether it's the
yeah,
Hobsons of the world or whatever. I get that people can come off like they might be trying too hard, but it's like acknowledge that people are talented. I don't
definitely.
listen to Logic on the regular, but I know he's very
Yeah, I
talented.
mean, I think he's one of the most overhated artists
Right.
because
That's what I was trying to name. Right. The
yeah,
very hated artists that have high skill level.
yeah,
And I'm
definitely,
probably not in the right room when that stuff's getting thrown around.
definitely. No, I think there are certain artists, like you said, that just get, like, way overhated on. I'm like, "Okay, like, I know that's public perception, but,
Right.
like, let's look at the actual facts here. Like, let's
Yeah,
listen to the
right.
actual technical ability he is able to bring, and, like, he's solid. It might not be your sound, but it doesn't mean it's bad, you know? Okay, well, let's go into teaching and rapping and how they're similar. You have a long research. When I was researching you, it was very interesting. You're a very interesting guy. I gotta give you this. I mean, you've
Appreciate it.
got TED Talks on some sort of on all sorts of things, and then you also have a ton of music to go through. So, talk about how teaching and rapping are similar.
So I would say mostly they're not. I
Yeah,
acknowledge the fact that there is a lot of why
yeah,
people say the question, because on a surface level there's a lot that they're not similar. Where it is like I say, as a I was doing a live stream show with my man Bernard, right here. I do mine. He'd be just like you, and we were using similar formats, right? And it was called Introverse, and it was about
yeah,
two introverts who are creative extroverts but social
yeah.
introverts, right? I'm
Hmm,
a social introvert,
okay,
but I'm a creative extrovert, right? Teaching, you
I
are
like that.
somewhat on a stage, right?
Yeah,
There's an audience in front of you, right?
constantly presenting. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so that is a clear kind of thing, right? Like, when you're rapping, you step up to the microphone, you need to be confident, know what you're going to do, and be able to
yep,
do it well, right?
yep,
In that regard, they're both similar because they're outward facing things that require competency and confidence, right? They also can both be educational, obviously, right? They don't have to be. I mean, you can, especially rap, you could rap stuff that's just totally off the wall, and there's not
yeah,
a whole lot of
nonsense.
educational content unless
Yeah,
we're really stretching what we mean by educational content, right? And likewise, you can be in certain classes that, when not done right, have no educational value whatsoever. You're not remembering anything from that class, and you're like, why did I take this, right? But in a
yeah,
perfect world, they both do have similarities. It's just we're not in a perfect world. So
yeah.
there are a lot of reasons why they're not that similar most of the time. I try to make them very similar, right? So I try to
Yeah.
make, when I'm teaching a class, I want it to be engaging and I want it to be informative.
Yeah.
When I'm rapping, I want it to be engaging and I want it to be informative, right? I'm not
Yep.
going to jump around and do cartwheels and handstands necessarily. And I mean in the classroom and on the stage, right?
Yeah.
People might think, "Yo, you got a rapper for a professor. He must be." Bro, I'm not doing head spins. I'm barely
Yeah.
ever rapping in the
Yeah.
class, right? I might
Yeah.
walk into the class tomorrow like, "Hey, what's good, everybody?" Like they're gonna know that I'm from hip hop culture, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a part of my life, but they also are going to know that if I need to freak it differently and talk
Yeah.
about the value of something else, that I can go there. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's important to acknowledge that they don't have to necessarily look 100% similar. But when you incorporate aspects of both things, I think it's great. If you put educational value into the music and you put music into the educational arenas, I think you have a winning formula. Let's face it, a lot of faculty out there. I'm also a director of faculty development. So
Oh, okay.
on the administrative side, I'm an associate professor of mathematics, and but on the I'm a hybrid, right? So
Yeah.
I don't have the same teaching obligation at this stage as a lot of people, right? I might be teaching one course, I might teach two courses max. Sometimes I teach zero because I have more administrative stuff that I need to be doing, right? That's
Yep.
very rare. So, but the reason I put that out there is I'm splitting the two sort of identities, right? From a faculty development standpoint, I'm trying to help faculty think about what they could do to engage, right? Hey, you're doing this great, but let's tweak this maybe, right? Or I'm observing your class and I'm noticing that, you got a row over here who's not paying attention whatsoever. I'm
Yeah.
just kind of like your video recorder in a way. I'm like, hey, this is just what's happening. Let's figure out something that we could do that's in your style so that you don't have to feel like you're doing handstands and cartwheels either, but that it's still true to you. And that's the same thing as an MC. I'll give you the little nerd session, right? If you're looking at a standard normal curve, right? If you're
Yep.
one standard deviation away from the mean, you're not going to lose too many people, right? It's when you go two standard deviations out that might seem a little weird, especially if someone catches you on the right side and the left side of those two standard deviations. Now you're four standard deviations away, and they're like,
Yeah.
you're not even the same person, right?
Yeah.
So some people want to switch it up and do the code switch so much that it's going to lose too many people. And I'm like, if you can just keep within like one standard deviation at any given time, that's still a full two standard deviations away from the mean, and it
Yeah.
still could be a bit much, but you got to know that's your leeway, right? You have from here to here. You don't want to be doing this, then this back to back all the time. But hey, I might wear a suit and be walking in with a briefcase, right? And I might be looking just like I'm looking right now on the next day, but I don't want you to be freaked out by it. I want
Yeah.
you to know that's within my stretch area. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
when I'm talking to faculty, it's the same thing. Like, what's your suit? What's your snapback on in reverse in terms of your bag? What do you have that, like, what does super traditional lecture you look like? And what does super wild experiential learning look like for you? And let's figure out your parameters where you can operate in, so that's maybe the best way to say it.
I like it. I like the way you connected that. Obviously, you've had a lot of time to think about that, doing both. But, I think from the surface level, there's nothing. But when you really dig deep, there's definitely some similarities, and it's cool the way you put it. So thank you
Yeah.
for going through that for us.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
hop back into rap. What do you love about old school rap, and what do you not like about old school rap?
What I don't like about old school rap is the revered nature we tried to give to every single thing that came out, when in
True.
reality, every single thing that came out is not worthy of the reverence.
True. That's
um,
fair. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
There's critics then too.
Similar to today, if you're an artist and a fan of today, you should not like it just because it came out today, right? Like
True.
because you're trying to be on the latest and greatest new hotness and trying to be, like super hip dude, right?
Yeah.
Or dudette, right? So same value in both scenarios, but we sometimes just have this false memory of the old school as if it
Yeah,
wasn't all ABC rap that, like, how now
nostalgia.
brown cow, right?
Yeah,
Because
nostalgia definitely
most of it
breaks that
was
up.
how
Yeah.
now brown cow. Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I'm a huge basketball fan, as you might see too. And I
Yep.
say the same argument with basketball. Stop
True.
with the old school people, if they played today, right, would
Yeah.
dominate. they would get trashed. Like most of them on the normal, like Jason Tatum's crossover dribble at 6'8", right? Step back between the legs, draining threes. It's a totally different game. And it's the rare exception from the old school that could play with that game. It's the exception, right? Similarly, if we want to do it in reverse, it is a rare exception that somebody from the old school plays in today's arena, right? Unless they study and are a student of the game. I try to do that because I do come from the old school,
Yeah.
rap lineage, right? But I rap in today's world.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I'm Kodak Black, right? It
Yeah,
doesn't,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it also doesn't mean that I would diss Kodak Black either. You know what I'm
Yeah, yeah.
saying? I
Yeah,
respect what he
definitely,
can do, and
definitely,
I'm like, what is he doing that's nice, and what kind of thing can I
definitely.
learn from that? You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I think it's important to have that balance when you're talking about it, because people to be just like, yo, Run DMC are the gods, and it's like, okay, I acknowledge what they did. I get it. I was around for some of that, and I also, if I'm being honest, I haven't played Run DMC in over a decade, right? It's like,
yeah,
so
he's not on my rotation, yeah.
yeah, it's not in my rotation, bro. And it's like, when it comes on, if I'm at a wedding, I'm be like, yo, that's dope. But it's
Yeah,
like, I'm not being like, yo, what's up with Daryl McDaniels? You know what I'm saying? It's
yeah,
just not really happening
yeah,
like that, right? And
yeah,
and that's not to try to be insulting of the legends. It's just keeping it a full buck.
yeah,
It's I'm not listening to MC Shan. I'm
yeah,
not. Like if the bridge comes on or whatever, like the bridge. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Next, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, yep,
But
yep,
if AZ comes on, I can hear the vintage flow with an
yep,
unbelievable talent that I can say, "Oh, wow, I can listen to." But at the same time, I'm not bumping AZ every day either. You know what I'm saying?
yep.
I bump a lot more AZ, but I'm saying, you know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah, yeah,
So it's an evolution. It's on a spectrum. There are people that are great back in the day. There were great ballers back in the day that had great skills. Rarely, though, do you find one that makes it through. And when they do, I'm
yeah.
excited, I champion those people.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things in both basketball as well as hip hop artists. You got to look at, would they be able to adapt?
Right,
I mean, that's all it comes down to. Would they be able to adapt? I think
right,
there's certain people with athletic abilities who could adapt regardless
absolutely.
of the game. You know, their
Michael
game
Jordan
might
is
be
adapting.
different. Yeah, exactly. You'd be able to adapt, you know.
Michael
Three
Jordan
point,
would
a huge
dominate the
part of the
league.
game. Michael
Yep,
Jordan would focus on the 3-pointer. Like,
yep.
there's certain people
Michael
who
Jordan would be Anthony Edwards.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You would adapt your skills and your skill set to whatever the game asks of you, and I think
right,
the same goes for hip hop.
right,
I think, there's certain artists who are just bound to be good because of their skill set.
right,
Maybe, they change their sound to maybe sound what's popular in nowadays world, whether that's putting it on, like, that sample trap beat that we were talking about earlier, instead of your classic
right,
West Coast,
right, right,
smooth,
right, right,
old
right, right.
school, slow beat, that kinda thing. So, I definitely think you have a great point there. What do you love about new school rap, and what do you not like about it?
Wow. I would say this. There is a thin bandwidth in terms of what is acceptable in new school music,
Yeah,
right? In terms of what is mainstream. I think, and this is part of the old school answer too. I mean, old school stuff, it was all over the place. It was a wide bandwidth of what could come out.
yeah,
Everybody was different, right? Now it's a very narrow lane. And if you're off of that a little bit, it's going to take a
yeah,
while for people to find you or to resonate with you unless you get a massive cosign and spend
yeah,
a ton of money to promote it. So now it's harder than ever to be heard if you're a new school artist, especially if you're doing something different. So you're actually incentivized to do something similar because it's so expensive now to market new school music. It's not cheap. People talk about how cheap it is just to put a song up, but it's never
yeah,
going to get heard. Spotify's got thousands and thousands
yeah,
of songs every day that nobody hears, right? So
yep,
unless you're putting a huge marketing campaign, or you have a decent following, you're going to have a tough time coming outside of that narrow band. So that's probably my biggest
yeah,
criticism. It's not, and that's not really a criticism of the artist either. That's more of the industry that we've allowed to happen.
yeah, yeah.
Um, that's
Streaming
probably the
culture is
biggest thing.
weird, man.
Too
Streaming
much
culture is weird.
Yeah, and so it's easy to me to say too much reliance on auto-tune, right? But it's like,
Mm,
well, why is that? I mean, I've got auto-tune on me singing on a
that's the
bunch of my
sound, yeah,
songs too, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
But and auto-tune that I like, right?
yeah,
Sometimes I'll be like, let me find the perfect thing for this hook that I really, really like. And I'm like, when it has auto-tune, it's dope, even though I can sing it normal. But I'm like,
yeah,
my ear has conditioned to like it a little bit better when there's a little bit of it, right? But it's like the over reliance on, if you're going to hear the same formula a million times, you're going to get tired of it. It's like you're waiting for someone to really jump out those parameters and establish themselves to say, screw what everyone else is doing. I'm going to market this. Someone's going to bankroll this new
yeah,
style and open up the floodgates for people to be very different.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. That's a very, very great way to put it. It's interesting you bring up the whole issue with music almost being over bloated in some ways because it's so easy and accessible for people to make music and put it
Right.
out online
Right.
that like you said, you almost have to be signed by a label
Yeah.
to actually get that promotion, get it
Yeah.
out there into people's ears, or else it won't ever be found. Like you
No
said,
one knows. Yeah.
it's like it's like the dark hole. Like or the ocean. The ocean's a better example because you could put it out there and somewhere in the ocean, but if
Yep.
somebody's not got a Titanic ship out on the ocean, you're not gonna find it.
Like that
So
metaphor too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so
And
much
even if
out
they
there, and
do.
there's a lot of good music out there, that
Yeah.
people will never listen to, but
I would argue it's better than it's ever been. I would argue
yeah,
that music is better than it's ever been, but there's way more clutter in that oceans that you're not going to find
yeah,
the
yeah,
whale as easy, right,
yeah,
or whatever it is, right?
yeah,
Let
yeah,
alone a starfish. You're not gonna, you know
yeah,
what I'm saying? It's
yeah,
it's it's so saturated that it's like, but you're bound to. It's like talking about is there life in the universe? It's like it's so saturated with stars and planets,
yeah,
and of
yeah,
course there probably is, right? And it's
yeah,
like, good luck finding it, right? And
yeah.
when you do, it's the
Good luck
biggest
finding it,
discovery
but
ever.
it's there, but
Yeah,
good luck
right, right,
finding
right,
it,
right,
yeah.
right, right. So,
No, it's super interesting. I like that. I like that. All right, let's go into speaking of new school rap. Lot happened. Let's go into the Drake, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole weekend. Who else was involved?
that's
Metro
that's
Boomin.
that's already enough.
Let's
Yep.
the beef. I mean, it really unfolded this past weekend, like just blown out of proportion. Drake releases a response diss finally, then Kendrick releases two of them, and then another one the next day, and then Drake.
Yeah.
Crazy. First, let's just overall thoughts of the
Um,
beef.
Current shooting up of house scenario
Yeah,
off the
that's
table for a second. Let's say pre that. I think it's easy to say it's good for the art form. There's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there like, oh, it's premeditated or whatever. And like I don't even think that would take a conspiracy. I mean, I think it is good business. I think that even if they were best buds or worst enemies, it almost doesn't matter whether you think
yeah,
people were orchestrating it or you don't. It's a needed jolt for this style of hip hop, right? And I think where Drake is on the cusp, even Kendrick is on the cusp. J. Cole's not on the cusp. J. Cole is an MC, and some of the criticisms that people would put out about him, even in this battle when it first started, right, when he was more into the battle before
yeah,
throwing the hat out of the ring. The criticisms would be that he doesn't have the household brand name hit song kind of thing as much as
yeah,
actually all of them in a way don't have unbelievable song hit recognition. Even that's been a criticism of Drake, right? You don't have a classic that kind of insult, right? But Kendrick, it's like you're not really that relevant after the last album, right? There's all of this
yeah. That's fair.
lack of. I find this interesting because it's like you're talking about three preeminent rappers still in today's game who are at the tier end, maybe, of
Mm,
maybe sort of an era gone by, a style gone by. Let's hope not, but you can argue where they are fading from popularity and probably
mm.
need this, even though Drake is still massively
Little
huge. But it's
revival
like,
of life.
yeah, right, right, right. In terms of a style and genre of rap where
Mm,
lyrics matter in a
yeah,
very pop mainstream market, I would say A, it's needed. B, it's a microcosm of some of the issues that we're talking about, right? About like, how to make things relevant, how to make things
yeah,
intelligent, how to,
yeah,
and it's good to see the creativity. I guess what I
yeah,
would say
definitely.
J. Cole, I mean, I was excited by the second verse on the song. First
Yeah,
verse, I was like,
on the
"What's going on?"
conductor beat, that was hard, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I was excited to see Kendrick come with the 6-minute kind of joint. I'm like, okay, this he's really going at it, doing all the kind of crazy switch ups or whatever. And let's not even talk about the AI thing. But
Yeah,
that's a
that's
whole that's a whole different world.
rabbit hole, yeah.
Yeah, right. But it was good to see them pushing each other's pen, I would say, right? I get the J. Cole sentiment because it's like I feel that tension too sometimes. Sometimes you just wanna, like, chop off someone's head, and then you feel sad that you did it,
Yeah,
right? And that you don't go hard enough,
yeah.
and it's like, "Man, I really like this dude. Don't pair me up in a corny battle with this
Yeah,
person."
yeah,
Like, you
yeah.
know what I'm saying? Today's battles work that way, right? Like, me and
Yeah,
you could be best buds, and we get paired up in a
yeah.
battle, and I gotta pretend that I'm mad at you. You know
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah.
So
It's
it's
like
like,
fake beef almost, yeah.
right, and then where's it going when people are perceiving it to be real? So I just say I get that. I would love to see J. Cole really writing because I think J.
Yeah.
Cole's lethal, when he wants to be, he's lethal, absolutely.
Oh, we've
I
seen
think
some gnarly verses even in the last
absolutely,
5 years.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't have any hate for Drake. I think he can write at a very dope level too. To put it this
yeah.
way, Drake is better than almost all the rappers who think Drake sucks, right? Like,
That's fair.
yeah,
That's a fair
if you're a
point.
rapper who thinks Drake
Another
sucks,
guy
he's
who's
probably better than
overhated.
you. Right, right.
Another guy who's overhated, yeah.
Right, right. He's like you're hating on him and you're not sure why. Maybe it's you think
Yeah.
someone wrote his rhymes or whatever, but like,
Yeah.
you know, shout out to my man Mickey Fax who was just talking about his couplets and he's like, "Hey,
Yeah.
love him or hate him, he's got some nice double entendres there. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to deal with it."
He had some creative bars. I mean, like, the
Absolutely.
Prince line in, Push Ups,
Absolutely.
I mean, everyone's talking about that, but, like, that was clever as shit, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
there's some clever stuff in
What
almost every diss track he dropped that I was like,
absolutely,
"Okay,
yeah.
okay."
I think with Drake, I guess what I would say is I was actually happy to, and it's so hard to keep up with the names of all the tracks, right? You got to have them
Yeah.
on a notebook. But
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
Drake's most recent one, I believe, where he started answering all the underage dating kind of stuff or whatever, right?
Yeah, because he
When he
wasn't
got
answering it at first, yeah.
I like that he went in on it. He didn't let him off the hook. He's like, "Look, bro, like, I don't know what you're talking about, but you're smoking something, right? And
Yeah.
you're crazy, and this is why." I like that he came at that, like, because that's what it should sound like if that's not you. That's what people are thinking in their head. Like, bro, if that's not you, don't just give it one line. You can't let
Yeah.
somebody be talking about you a diddler or something like that and
Yeah.
not be like, "What, bro?" Like,
Yeah.
that's like a cardinal offense, you know? So you
Yeah.
better like not just take that as like what I mean, unless it's someone you don't know down the street saying some dumb stuff, but it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what are you talking about here? Like, dude's like, what? Like, dude, I'm too
Yeah.
big of a star for that to even be the case to be with underage girls. Like, what are you talking about? I love that. That's not a great punchline, but just the fact that he
Yeah.
said it matter of fact, like, dude, I'm too big. I'm not. What are
Yeah.
you talking
I
about?
can't
And
get
like,
away with that, yeah.
exactly. Like, I kind of like that. It was clever to do that. As clever as it was of Kendrick going into all the levels of
Oh my
cleverness that he went
gosh.
into. He just
Yeah.
went into a labyrinth of different ways to attack you, and
Yeah.
it needed some kind of response like that.
Yeah.
I don't think any of them are hurt by this at all, bro. I think, I mean, other than Drake's property, but you know,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's hurt by this kind of stuff. I think it helps all of them. They're all relevant in the ears of my son's never heard of any of those rappers, and he's a fifth grader. Like, he's never
Yeah.
heard that. He's heard of
Yeah.
everybody who's if they're let's say if they've made it into video game land, kids are
Yeah.
going to hear about them, right? So you can name the rappers who the kids are going to know because
Mhm.
you can just say who's in Fortnite. You know,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
if
So he knows Travis Scott, yeah.
he's very aware of Travis Scott,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right. He's very
Yeah.
he knows the dances. He knows, you know what I'm saying, and like that's what kids know. If
Yeah.
you ain't in there, he knows Doja Cat. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I'm saying?
Kendrick is an interesting animal in this one because, like, obviously he drops like, it's funny to me because it really just starts off with this one diss track that nobody saw coming.
Right.
This verse really off of not even his own song, unlike that,
Right.
and him just coming after Drake and Cole, and then Cole, responds and whatever, but well, one where I was like, "Holy like,
It was a perfect example of
god
out of pocket for
damn."
someone you didn't expect to be out of
Yeah,
pocket.
yeah. The
Yeah.
one where I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is this man doing?" Like, he's absolutely terrorizing this man is, I think it's called oh gosh, I'm gonna what's it
It's
called?
so it's so hard, bro.
Meet the Grams.
Yes, Meet the Grams, yes. What a great name too.
Oh my gosh, the way he addresses the son, the dad, the mom, about just how big of a pedophile this guy
Really,
is,
really went in.
how, like, he deserves to I think he even says a line of, like, he deserves to die in a cell like Weinstein. I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh my god." It's seriously one of the most evil sounding disses I've heard in a long time.
Yeah,
I mean, we haven't heard that type of talk
right.
in a while. That one shocked me. That one I still can't get over. I think there's some other clever ones and, like, some fun ones too, like,
You know why
Not Like Us.
you're not thinking of the actual words because it's more schemes than bars. It's
Yeah.
more schemes than punchlines, I should say.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
know, it's more like people are not coming off the scheme, they are staying on it, and they are relentless. Whatever this theme is we're gonna talk about, we're gonna break it down all the way,
Yeah,
and then, paragraph, and then boom, we might switch over here. Not so
yeah,
much the bars in between, nice flows and stuff, at least especially with Kendrick. I
yeah,
mean, Kendrick had a couple punchlines though that were crazy, but for the most
yeah,
part, it's like relentless dog on a bone kind of stuff.
yeah,
It's like I'm gonna
definitely.
do my due diligence because we've seen that in the evolution of battle rap that you and
Yeah,
Drake is a big part of that. You have to stick on the theme. You know what I'm saying? So
definitely, and just like Kendrick I think this is one Kendrick's strength is he definitely has concepts, and he stuck through the
yeah,
concepts on each song. I think he had a
yeah,
concept with every song,
yeah,
and that's why I probably would give the edge to Kendrick,
yeah,
just because I think he executed his concepts and the meaning behind each song better than Drake. I think Drake tried, and I
yeah.
don't think Drake may be as far behind as some people may say.
No, because he's more listenable than
Yeah.
Kendrick when he's doing like Kendrick is so avant-garde that for the
Yeah.
average person, the listenability part is harder.
Yeah.
Like Drake learned with Meek Mill, like of
Yeah.
how you need to be dog on the bone and stay on the topic and still make your beats sound like they're listenable, right?
Yeah.
And still make your stuff sound relatively dope. Kendrick can drift off into really,
Yeah.
there's an old school dude who used to do that. He was so avant garde that he went to Divine Styler. This dude was back from like the early 90s, bro. Divine Styler was like genius Kendrick Lamar level kind of dope and went so left field that he never came back, And I'm not saying Kendrick has gone that far.
I know what you're
Um,
saying, though.
it's
Yeah.
similar in the Tyler realm, right? Tyler's
Yeah.
so avant garde, right? That it worked, right? And then he
That's
kind of
right.
centered himself back in a little bit and took advantage of the success. Kendrick
Yeah.
has done a little bit of that too, right? They got the Grammy thing going for both of them. They got this bigger than life kind of
Yeah.
thing. But he also, with his latest album, I mean, it's like a journey into where most average hip hop fans aren't. You're gonna listen to it, go, yo, this might be classic, but I'm not listening to it again. Like I didn't play Kendrick twice. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like I maybe should have played it twice. I played it once.
Yeah.
Pimp a Butterfly, you're gonna play 1,000 times, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
but but you know, it's like new Kendrick. My God, I'm actually forgetting the name. What's the new Kendrick album? I can't even remember
Mr.
the name
Morale
of
and
it.
the Big Steppers.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
And so you see my point. It's like I'm like I acknowledge the dopeness, but I'm not playing that
Yeah.
dopeness.
It's not for everyone.
Yeah, and I just think Drake has a better handle on A, being the pop star, and then B, writing battle raps like the Meek Mill kind of stuff, kind of honing the talent. All right, I'm ready for y'all. I think Drake might end up on top of all this if it keeps going on, but I don't know if it's going to go on much longer. It's hard to say now with all the developments.
It feels like it's died off
Yeah,
after this last one. I could be wrong,
yeah,
we never know in the hip hop game, but, like,
yeah,
it feels like everything's been said that needs to be said. To your point, Drake is more of a pop star, and I think obviously Kendrick comes after him for that, and I think that's kind of whole Kendrick's basis, like, "I'm a true rapper. I don't
right,
know who you are, you're a
right,
pop
right, right.
star, you're" he said some sort of, "Stick to the melodic stuff, you're
Yes,
not tough," something like
yeah,
that, somewhat more like that. I mean, that's kind of his whole premise behind that, and I think, reasonably so, he should go after that. Kendrick's, you know, his whole upbringing, you look at projects like Good Kid, Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, I mean, those are what he talks about, those concepts of, growing up in the struggle and, that kind of thing, so, and Drake really doesn't talk about that ever,
yeah.
so Very, very interesting world because honestly, hip hop for the most part hasn't had this type of drama
Right,
in a long time.
right.
And
And what it is, it's
your
been real
point
drama. It's been
is kind
people
of a
dying drama.
revival
Yeah, yeah.
to
No,
the I
I mean, sometimes
to
the
the
drama
sorry.
becomes real street level stuff where people are getting,
Yeah,
it's the get got kind of stuff, like people caught slipping, when there's real drama, and this,
yeah,
I mean, recent house shooting, aside again,
yeah,
it's like, you're hoping stuff doesn't get crazy, right? Off of what is really
yeah,
just rap battle beef and not really real beef. It's like
definitely.
I'm a better rapper than you beef, which
Yeah,
is comfortable for all three of those dudes. You know what I'm saying?
definitely.
None of them are trying to,
Definitely.
be a story on the news in the wrong way kind of thing, right? And so that's the drama we've been used to seeing in hip hop for the last few years, or really just some like, housewives kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's needed in terms of just lyrical level of
So
stuff. So,
so it sounds like you respected J. Cole's decision to opt out, which
yeah,
is an interesting take
yeah.
because I also kind of stuck by that. There's a lot of upset hip hop fans that he opted out,
Because you want
just because
bars. You want bars. I get
well,
it. You
and I
want
think a
bars.
lot of people were like, "Oh, you dropped this diss track and you don't even mean it now?" Because a lot of people are like, "This is pretty solid." Like, it might not be as good as Kendrick, but it's like, it's solid. Like,
Yeah,
he had some bars in there, like and now a lot of people are like, "Oh, does he even believe he's the best now?" Like, they go back on a lot of those verses where he's like, "I'm the Muhammad Ali," that type of stuff. They're like,
yeah.
"Do you believe that anymore? Do
Well,
you stand behind it?"
I'm
But
sure
here's
you
my
watched the
thing with
video.
it yeah, and here's
Yeah,
my thing with it too, like, when have you ever heard before this J. Cole get in a beef with anyone?
right,
He
right.
hasn't. It's just
No,
not who he is.
not at all. Yeah,
And I think J. Cole is a very self-aware person and understood, like, "Bro, I don't believe in this. This is
yeah,
not who I am.
right.
Like,
He
it
said that.
might
Yeah,
be fun, but
yeah,
it's not who I am." Like, him and Kendrick go way back. There's stories of him
right,
I'm sure you've seen this. There's a story of him putting, uh, Kendrick onto, Dr. Dre.
right,
That's how he put him on the map.
right.
Obviously, like, they go way back, man.
Yeah,
So, that's just not who he is, and so I respect it too, but I wanna hear your opinion as well.
yeah, bro. I mean, manufactured beef can feel like, what am I doing this for, kind of thing, right?
It's forced. It's forced.
It J. Cole's life is really good. You know, watching the video of him doing his show there and making that announcement, that's a hard thing to do in front of your crowd. You
Takes
know
a
what
lot
I'm
of
saying?
courage. Yeah.
It's a lot. That's a hard thing. So people that think that's just like some publicity stuff. No, I think that's a dude. Again, we can only estimate, but it's like it looks like a person who's like, "Oh, I see where this is going. This is not what I signed up for."
Yeah.
Like I kind of got in it because
Fair.
like he said, my phone's going off the hook, and I got to respond, right? Because people are like, "Yo, that's what you got to do." I mean, that's what he says, right? And I get that. I get if your phone's blowing up, people are like, "Yo, you hear what this sucker said about you, bro? You gotta say something, man. You
Yeah.
gotta look stupid. You get your agent in your ear, and everybody telling you what you got to do." And he's like, in retrospect, he's like, "What am I doing, bro? Like, let me
Yeah, this
just be the
isn't
bigger
me.
person right now. Take myself out of this. You two can play in the sandbox, right? Maybe if I feel so inclined, maybe I will come back later and make some other kind of song, but it's been pretty silent. I got no problem with that, bro. Like, if you're gonna know when it's time to really go at somebody, you know what I'm saying? You're
Yeah.
gonna really know. Like, if someone's coming, for your essence or whatever, that's different. But that, bro, your name was like thrown in there like a
Yeah.
side order. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like,
Yeah.
why are you going at your dog, bro?
Definitely.
I got no
Definitely.
problem with that.
Alright, well, any other thoughts?
Um, I got a question for you. You got any bars, man? You got some secret bars that we should know about?
I actually believe it or not, back in the day in high school, I did a little bit of rapping myself. It wasn't anything too crazy.
All right. No, well,
I've
that's
dropped I was a SoundCloud rapper, just a few things here and there. I
yeah.
haven't I haven't been in it in a long time. I used to freestyle with my friends and that kind of thing, but, like, it's been a while. So, definitely where I connect a little bit within the hip
I
hop
always like to
game and
know
got
how,
me into yeah.
where people get in. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Whether
Yeah,
if they
yeah,
got a little
so
MC in them or whatnot. So no,
yeah,
that's good.
it was nothing too crazy. I dropped I think it was 3 albums, and I did some local stuff, but nothing too crazy, and I kinda just fell off. It kind of became more work to me than it did
Right.
enjoyable, and I think I was just like, music's fun,
Yeah, you got to do it
and
when
and
it's
I get the
enjoyable.
same enjoyable and now I love reviewing albums. I think diving deep into what somebody's trying to convey is super fun, and I get the same amount of enjoyment, so
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And every artist loves stuff reviewed, so I mean that always means a lot to the artist too, whether
yeah,
it's good or bad. People taking the time
yeah,
to check out your art is always like a valued thing, man. So you can't go wrong in that lane.
yeah. No, and I try to fairly criticize to the best of my ability. Not everyone's gonna agree with you, but
Right.
it's my opinion at the end of the day. So, and I try to fairly do it the same way for everyone too. Give it 2 listens at least through, maybe
Yep.
sometimes 3 if it's super complicated, super complex, and
Right.
that's even the bad songs too. You gotta listen through the bad ones. You can't skip them. So no skips on my.
That's two more full listens to the album than I gave to Kendrick Lamar, man. So right there, that's
There
right.
you go. There you
And I
go.
like Kendrick, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. All right.
not
Well, I want to give you a chance to plug your platform where people can find you, whether it's social media, whether it's on Spotify, SoundCloud, where people can find
yeah.
your stuff.
Well, definitely all that. I just go by Professor Lyrical. I go by Pro for short. So if you Google Professor Lyrical, I always tell people go there, because people try to send you to one thing or whatever. That thing could be down in a month. My website's
Sure.
professorlyrical.com, but if you Google it, that's going to pop up. So get back to Google, see what it tells you to do, and follow there. But yeah, man, like everybody, we're always trying to send you to the streaming sites that pay us a third of a penny. You know what I'm saying? Hey, bro, if you don't want to go, I'm okay with the third of the penny. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like no stress. You know what I'm saying? But Google me, make the search engine go up. Check me out that way, and you can read or listen. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I tell people.
definitely.
Reading's not bad either. So read, watch, or listen.
Well, Pro, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Very easy to talk to. Just 2 people who are obviously very passionate about hip hop and
Yes, sir.
super fun to just dive deep into so many different topics. So I appreciate you coming on
Likewise.
and joining my platform and showing us yours as well. So thank
Likewise.
you.
Much
And
appreciated.
yeah, I wish you the best. Definitely am a fan now.
Likewise, man. Thank you.